In this video, we'll explore European math from 500 to 1600. At the beginning of this is the Dark Ages, where very little learning was going on. In some regards, learning was seen as a bad thing. For example, at the end of this time, when Pope Sylvester II studied to learn more from the Muslim schools, he was seen to have traded his soul to the devil. However, the transmission of learning and mathematics did continue and was greatly improved in the 12th century. And a lot of this came from translators going out to countries that had been conquered by the Arab nation, which had transmitted all of their learning to these different areas. And it was these translators that would use Latin, or translate into Latin, so that it could be utilized in Western Europe. Two major people include Adelard of Bath, who went and became a Muhammad student to help translate these works and then bring it back to Europe, and then Ghirardo of Cremona, who translated over 90 works to help improve the mathematical learning that was occurring in Western Europe at that time. One of the most talented mathematicians of that time was considered Fibonacci, and a lot of the work that he did was too advanced for his time period and was not improved upon for centuries. One of his major works at the time was considered the Liber Bacci, which was to try to get others to use the Hindu and Arabic numerals more, from 0 to 9, and included the Fibonacci sequence. However, even his work was not, in that regard, was not utilized for centuries. Other two important people at the time include Nemorarius, who was the first to start using letters to represent general numbers, and Nicolas Cusa, who was considered the most notable mathematician at the time, as he started to utilize coordinate graphs, fractional exponents, and even start to begin the work in infinitesimal analysis. And their works even improving at the time is impressive when you think about the Black Plague was going across Europe, and there was the major 100 Years' War that was occurring. However, after this time came the Renaissance period, and much of this improved what was occurring in Western Europe, as printing allowed works to be disseminated across the continent. You had a resurgence in others learning the classical works. Universities were being created, and people were not only translating work, but were also trying to start creating textbooks that could then be utilized by others to simplify algebra and provide new symbols that could be used in the works that they were doing. There were some major people during the 15th century as well, including Nicolas Cusa, who helped improve the calendar, Johann Muller, who's considered Regiomontanus, and he helped separate trigonometry from just the astronomy at that time. Choquet was considered very brilliant, but his math and algebra that he did was too advanced for his time as well. And then Pacioli helped create a compilation of the different works of the time using syncopated algebra. So there was that transition from the verse that was before to now trying to get more simple use. And at the time you start to continue to see that spread of the Hindu-Arabic numerals, but there's a lot of resistance. However, it was too easy to use for people not to slowly flip to symbols, and they started to create symbols for other types of mathematics and methods that were being used in algebra as well. As you see, we have the beginning of the use of the plus symbol. X and Y axis were starting to be created. Plus minus, the square root, equals, simplifying use of sine and cosine. We have pi, and then people were actually starting to set up equations, do algebraic manipulations, and solve those equations. Another major person in the 16th century was Cardano, and while not considered a very nice man, his works did help improve the concepts of understanding that there are negative roots and imaginary numbers, and he created what was considered the beginning of probability with his Gambler's Guide. Another major person of the time was Franscois Viete of France, and he helped break the Spanish Code during the war with Spain. His work was very influential in trig and used the 6 trig functions as well as analyzing trig equations, and his work in artem developed much of our symbolic algebra that we use. He would use vowels for unknown quantities and consonants for known quantities. They also had the same letter for multiple powers of a quantity, and he tried to simplify written operations. However, he did not use the equal sign. And our last major people include Clavius, who created two of the major textbooks of the time in arithmetic and algebra. Stevin introduced theory of decimal fractions and started to improve on hydrostatics and military engineering. Copernicus really started to improve our understanding of the universe and the idea that we revolve around the sun and not that the solar system revolves around the earth. And then Regiomontanus improved upon Copernicus's work and started to define trig functions as ratios of the sides of a right triangle.